and I think that's important. But there's no, I'll mail out the recording after too. So the reason for this call and it's really just people asking for it. I've had a lot of people talk to me about mindset stuff, and it's something that I'm really pretty passionate about. And up until like a year ago, maybe a year and a half ago, I really didn't feel like mindset was even a big deal. I just like never really felt that way, and I didn't fully get it. And then it kind of clicked for me. I think I understood certain aspects of mindset, but I didn't really think it was like a real, I thought it was kind of rah-rah or BS or whatever. So what I want to do, the way I want to approach it today, and obviously all of that shifted, and I want to kind of talk about the way I approach it, and then maybe it'll help you, maybe it won't. Hopefully it does. And I want to kind of go through like just some thoughts I have on it. I kind of made some talking points, and then from there, I'm going to open it up and I'm going to answer, questions that people have, and we can kind of just talk about it, and I'll give my thoughts, and other people can kind of contribute too, and mostly via chat. Once we get to the question portion too, what we'll do is I'll have you guys ask questions probably in the chat, and I'll get with them, and then we'll potentially have you unmute yourself at that point, and we can kind of talk then. But let me go and share my screen. I want to kind of just talk through, I just like threw this together super top of mind, honestly, but just some kind of basic stuff that I personally believe or think about via mindset. So I'll probably talk for about 10 minutes or so, maybe up to 15 minutes. I don't want to make this all about me and me just talking about myself, but I want to kind of share some stuff because maybe it'll help you. And after that, I will open up to questions from that point on. So I don't know why I decided to capitalize the first word of almost every single sentence here, besides the fact that I'm a psychopath, which you may have gotten from today's Facebook post. But I kind of want to share a few things. And also please do mute yourself, guys, if you're, for now. And then when it comes time to do questions, we can kind of, you can unmute yourself at that point. So, okay. The bold things are kind of the main ideas or topics. Eric, I'm going to mute you. Good to see you though, by the way, Eric. So like one of the first ones, and these aren't in perfect order, but it's about responsibility, which is something that Stephen Covey talks about in his book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And maybe you guys have read that book, maybe you haven't. It's a classic book for sort of personal development and effectiveness and all of these things. But the one thing that really, there's a few things from Stephen Covey that stick out to me, but one of the biggest is this idea of responsibility, and it being that, we can't really control like what happens to us. We can't control, different stimuli, but what we do get to control is how we respond to it. And that's a really, really huge blessing and kind of what makes us humans and special and unique. He talks about Viktor Frankl, who wrote, A Man's Search for Meaning. And for those who don't know anything about Viktor Frankl, he was a scientist or psychologist, like a professor, well-educated, a Jewish man who got sent to one of the concentration camps during World War II. And he wrote this book when he got out about how this is what he realized. He realized that while they could take everything else from him, right? And really the most depraved way in all of his humanity, they could not take from him his freedom or his ability to respond. And that's an extreme example, but for us in our everyday life, I truly feel like we get to figure out how we respond. Like things bombard us, sensory inputs bombard us, stimuli bombard us, but we do get to pick how we respond to that. And now I managed to like draw a yellow thing on my screen here. I know there's a way to get rid of that. Clear all drawings. Perfect. Okay. But like the other thing is that you are kind of what you focus on, right? So I feel like we talk about how you're a product of the people you surround yourself with, right? You are the sum of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And I think that's true, but you're also the sum of the 5 things that you spend the most time focusing on as well. And we get to be kind of selective in how we approach that too. So a few kind of examples just off the top of my head from this week, one would be for my RMBC course, which I've launched, and it's going extremely well. I've got, my goal for May was to sell 200 copies of it, right? Like 235 now. I think I'll probably get to 300, 400. People are giving incredible feedback. Like all this great stuff's happening. Like it's something I worked really hard on. I'm really proud of it. I think it can change lives. It's just like awesome. And I shared it. And then there's one person who it's not included in my copy accelerator mastermind. And I went back and forth on if I should do that or not. And the reason I decided not to is like, because the mastermind trains you on RMBC in a really in-depth way. There's weekly training calls, all of this stuff. And I figured, the people in the mastermind, get all of that. They don't need this course. If they want the course, they can get it. But I want to do something separate on my own, which, I talked with Justin, my partner in the mastermind, about. He totally got it, totally cool. And so that happened. And I think something like 12 or 13 of the people in the mastermind have bought it and they love it. And others have asked me if they need it. And I've talked through it with them and been like, I've never been like, you absolutely need it. I've mostly been like, you don't need it, but if you want it, you can get it. But there's one person who sort of has been upset about it. It feels like I, was being greedy by not including it in the mastermind, and like that I missed this opportunity, and sort of like been negative about it. And is like now not as much of a fan of me. And when I heard that, like it upset me a little bit, but then I kind of sat there and thought about, did I make a mistake? Do I need to change everything I'm doing? Do I need to put it into the mastermind now? Like, did I blow it? But then I realized, like, well, what do I want to focus on that one person and their opinion that sort of is like jarring to me and maybe makes me doubt myself? Or do I want to focus on the 230 people who have gotten this course and who love it, and the mastermind members who've gotten it and love it, and the fact that no one else in the mastermind like cares at all? And like, why? So the point being with this example, like, right, where do I focus my attention? Do I focus it on this one unhappy person or on all of the people who are happy? But what I think we tend to do sometimes, especially if we have challenges with self-worth and things like that, which we can get into, is we're just waiting for that one critic to come out of the woodwork, that one person to come out and say that we're a fraud or we're a phony or a full of shit or whatever it is. And if that person comes out, then we cling to that because it validates these inside fears that we have and these kind of doubts and all these things. But in reality, like, is that logical to do, right? Does it make sense to focus on that one thing, or does it, or everything else? So one thing is that it is like, where do you put your attention, and looking at like your kind of confirmation bias, like, right? Because you're going to be confirmed with what you get. Cool, Michael, I'm glad you're getting value from this so far. Another really silly example, I did that webinar with Justin Goff this week and went for an hour and a half. Sorry, I know it says my connection is unstable, but hopefully it's good, right? Okay. I did that webinar with Justin Goff, like for an hour and a half, shared all this value, really like tried to just bring it. And then Justin put it up on his YouTube channel. It's got maybe, I don't know, 600, 700 views, and it had like, the last time I went to check, it had like, 37 likes and it had 1 dislike. And same thing, as funny as that sounds, I was like, hey, maybe who's this person who disliked it? Why do they not like me? What is it they don't like about me? Do I have an enemy? And like, I legit got kind of like worried about it for a second. And it's the same thing. I'm like, why am I worrying about one person who doesn't like me? I think that the truth is, like, as you become more and more public, especially, there's always going to be people who just for whatever reason don't like you. They're going to find a reason to just want to bring you down. And that happens even if public means that you're, marketing yourself and promoting yourself and branding yourself and doing stuff like I'm doing, or if it means that your friends and family find out that you're starting to have success as a freelancer or as a business owner or as a copywriter. There's always going to be someone out there who can't be happy about that and who kind of wants to bring you back down. And usually it happens because they're unhappy, right? If we think about it, it's because they're in a shitty place in their life, or seeing you win makes them feel guilty about the fact that they haven't won, and they want to take you and cut you back down so that it lets them off the hook. When you think about it this way, you almost feel bad for these people, because like what they're trying to do is they're trying to let themselves, they're subconsciously trying to let themselves off the hook for not achieving whatever they think that they could really actually achieve. And they do that by hating on you and thinking that whatever you've achieved must be bullshit. Or, you must be a shitty person or whatever it is. So when I look at that stuff, I think about back to like, what do I focus on? And what I focus on is, the majority, and instead of like the small few who are trying to bring me down. So I think that's very mindset oriented, right? Because again, where do you put your attention and focus? So that's the first point. Again, I promise I want to get to lots of questions and answers, but I do hope that this stuff is valuable. Is this valuable to some of you guys hearing this, or is it not? Please let me know either way. If it's not, I can shut the F up for real. Okay. Okay, cool. Awesome. All right. I really appreciate you guys letting me know that. Fantastic. All right, perfect. The next part to this, and it's similar with what you focus on, but it's the idea of like, do you look at challenges as like a problem or as an opportunity? So I want to see the chat here. Yeah, David says critics and haters will always be haters. Totally agree. Yeah, John, the one person who says it's not, and I'll focus on that one person and just totally stop. No, just kidding. Okay, yeah, the next thing, and this is a big breakthrough for me in business, was realizing that, you know, there was no such thing as like a crisis, like in business especially. It's really just a never-ending series of challenges and kind of riddles and things to be solved, right? Like that is like the inherent nature of business in general, is that there's going to be problems and you're a professional problem solver. Like if everything went perfect all the time, then everyone would be a gajillionaire, and actually it would be a weird thing because the economy would grind to a halt if everybody solved everything and it all worked perfectly, right? The difference in business, and this will then transfer to our lives as well, is that it's tied to responsibility, but it's not like crises are going to happen, issues are going to happen. So that's not, you can't be reactionary and panic to that. Otherwise, don't be in business. Like it's not about that. It's how do you view them and how do you respond? And for me, when I shifted my mindset to that, and I realized that I get to like solve interesting and complex problems in business, it was such a game changer for me, because instead of freaking out with this like feeling in the pit of my stomach of anxiety and fear, I started becoming really desensitized to them in a good way. Because it was like, I'm not worried. Okay, like, yeah, of course. Oh, here's something to solve. And it doesn't mean you're thrilled that you have, you know, when shit hits the fan, but you don't freak out either, because it's very rarely the end of the road. Like the other thing to realize is, you know, you can pretty much bounce back from anything and everything besides death. You know, death is pretty final, you know, at least on this road. But beyond that, you can kind of bounce back from almost anything. And so starting to look at that in business was really, really helpful. Yeah, unless you're Chuck Norris. It's a good point, Andrew. You know, just one example I got, one of many, like I had like an affiliate network for about 2 years that went horrible. So you know, lots of my successes, crushed it with copy, tons of successful offers, great with Copy Accelerator. I've got this course going, my family, I've got all these wonderful things. I started an affiliate network in 2018. Thought it was a brilliant model. The model was essentially, you know, we'll write the copy for you, but then we'll do the design, dev, integrations, build the funnel, but then we'll also get you the traffic, and we do all this kind of stuff for you. And basically, the model sounded good. What happened is, turns out you're kind of running a business for people, but you don't own it, and those people don't know how to run the business themselves. And so we'd have people who didn't know if they were profitable or not, and they'd skip out on bills and owe us like hundreds of thousands of dollars over time, which were still owed money by all these people. Not that everybody didn't do a good job, but it became this huge thing when you're on the hook for traffic too. Because then if I help somebody to get a bunch of traffic to their offer and they never give me money, but I promised the money to somebody else, I'm the middleman. Now I'm still responsible. So I found out yesterday, like I was out by the pool with my wife and my daughter, and we were swimming, and I'm, you know, the sun shines on me and I'm feeling great. And I get a message from somebody that said, first and foremost, he was like, hey, I think like your old network owes me $256,000, which is not a great message to get when you're hanging out with your family at 5:30 in the afternoon, you know, swimming, having a couple of beers, and, you know, it's pretty blindsiding. But even there was a case where, and again, I get that's a lot of money and everybody's different, right? But it doesn't really matter if it was $560 and that's a ton to you, whatever. But the point is, it really hit me. And it was stressful for a minute, but even there, I'm like, okay. I'm like, so first of all, let's see if that's true. Like I went immediately from like this panicked, like anxiety, depressed mode to, all right, well, like, how do I solve, if this is true, like, how do I solve this problem? What do I need to do? And it was like, first of all, like, let's find out if it's true. We got the team from that company to go through and start finding accounting. Then if it is true, like, what does that mean? Like, and do I need to pay that full amount? Can I talk to this person and explain how It was for money that we got stiffed from other people. Can we negotiate? You know, what can I break it into like kind of like a series of payments? Like, what's the outcome that I need to have? And I started going into like problem solving mode instead of being in just pure crisis mode. And it's a huge paradigm shift because you could get that and just be like, you know, destroyed. I had the same thing. I'm going to use a big number again. I had a supplement offer with a partner in 2017 that was in the CBD space. And we were in the CBD space before you were supposed to be in the CBD space. Like it was like not even as accepted as it is now. So the offer did great. But one day the processing company basically freaked out and took like $2 million of profit from us. And that's money that we never got back. And we tried threatening lawsuits. We tried all of this stuff. Then we owed a bunch of vendors because we'd sold a bunch of inventory. And even there, it was this huge pain in the ass. We ended up having to pay, you know, I don't know, $500,000 or more of like debt to vendors that we could have tried to like, you know, kind of backtrack on, but we paid it off. And it sucked. And so instead of getting $2 million, $1 million each in profit that I would have in my bank account, I didn't. And I ended up having to pay a bunch of extra money that then, you know, so it hurt me like double. But even then I had this very clear feeling about this where I was like, okay, I could let this define me. Because how many people could have that narrative, right? Where now for the rest of their, I could envision that person who for the rest of their life goes around talking about how they were a millionaire, but it got taken away from them. And it was a hard luck thing. And they took years trying to get it back. And they focused on it. And like all this shit happened. And like they never got it back. And that's their hard luck story. And that's why they're not as successful as they could have been and all of this stuff, right? But Bailey, I know, man, but I've seen so many people doing this stuff. And I was like, but I don't want to be that person. I'm like, what if instead of that, I just let this go as much as it sucks? I mean, sure, we'll try to pursue legal means and get this money and things like that. But I'm like, I could spend the next 2 years fighting for this money, spending a ton of money to get it, doing all these things. I'm like, or I can just go out and add a shit ton of value to the world. And I believe I can make that money back tenfold by doing that. And I decided to focus on, you know, doing that instead of doing the being a victim to this like really shitty thing that happened. So those are examples of where, you know, I think you look at stuff, they're not always money related, but where you look at stuff that's like a, you know, it's not a crisis or a problem. It's just, it is what it is. It's the nature of business, or in some cases life. And the thing is, how do you solve it? Because it's the same thing for life. Like whether it's like a marital thing or like a crisis with friends or a crisis with health, all kinds of things like that. Like it's all about how you respond, going back to responsibility. A couple more here I do want to go through. Keep doing this thing with my bottom screen. Okay. Another question that I ask myself, and maybe you guys do this too, is like how often does your worst case scenario actually happen, right? Like that's the other thing too, because we start thinking about these worst case scenarios. We start thinking about the most awful things that can happen, like, and whether that's, you know, if I raise my hand and speak up at this event, you know, people are all going to think I'm dumb, or whether it's if I put myself out there, I'm going to fail and go bankrupt, or whatever the thing is. But like, if you actually look at it and you actually look at it in your life, right? Like how often has the worst case scenario happened? There's certainly a few people out there where their whole life is a worst case scenario. There's people in the third world who are born into slavery, and there's people who are tortured. There's awful things happen, sure. Okay, but like for you personally, is that what your life has been like? Or has it been something where, you know, for the vast majority of the time, it hasn't been the worst case scenario? And then maybe for what I do, and again, this is up to you, is like, think about the most jarring moments in your life, right? And like, when were like worst case scenarios, and like what really happened, or worst case scenarios? I mean, you know, I've told the story of where when I was in like 5th grade and I moved to like a new cross country from rural Maryland to San Diego, and I was overweight, and I was coming back from like gym class, and there was a hill with like the letters of our school on this hill. They called it like the grassy knoll, and it said LJCDS for the school. So kids coming back from gym class would go up this hill and then jump over the letters and down the hill. And in 5th grade, I was coming back down, and all the kids were like, "Hey, Stefan, like, you know, come jump with us." And I remember feeling so excited because I was being accepted for like the first time. Cause I moved to this new school. I was this kind of more country kid, and yeah, I was overweight, Linda. It wasn't like morbidly obese, but I was chunky. And I remember going up to the top of the hill and all the kids were like, jump. And I jumped. And when I landed, like a coordinated 50 plus kids all fell to the ground and pretended that there had been an earthquake because I was like so fat that when I jumped, I caused this earthquake. And like, it sounds funny, kind of, I don't know, but fifth grade Stefan was so devastated because like, you know, at the time it was this whole feeling of like being accepted and all this. And it damaged me for a long time, I think. But okay, so that's one of them. What's another? And here's another one that I thought about just recently here. And it's true too. Like, so right when I went back to San Diego and my dad was like dying of cancer, and I went in and to a bar. I went to my buddy's house near downtown, and he wasn't there yet. So I went to a bar and I got like a Budweiser from the girl as a bartender. I sat down by myself. I had this Budweiser, Bud Heavy. Then I went back to the bar to get another one, and this guy came up and kind of like replaced her, and was like, you know, hey, what's up? And I was like, can I get a Budweiser? And he was like, can I see your ID? And even though I'd already given it, I did. I gave it to him and he looked at it. And the place I'm from is called Poway, California. And he looked at it and he's like, no, you can go back to Poway and go fuck yourself and never come to this bar again. And I was like, what? He's like, you heard me, like, go fuck yourself, go back to Poway, you fuck. And he just cussed me out. It was a total like asshole to me. Out of nowhere, right? I was completely jarred. And I'm like, what's happening? And then he basically he's like, yeah, you didn't tip like the girl when you ordered the first beer. And I tried to like explain, I'm like, I'm sorry, I'm in a weird headspace. Like my dad's dying, all that. And the guy was like, yo, just go out here, go fuck yourself, leave. And I was so angry. I mean, I wanted to go back and just like vandalize the bar. I wanted to like, I was like, how does he not understand? Like I'm in this terrible emotional state. Like I always tip, which is true. I'm a great tipper. It was like this whole jarring, awful thing. I wanted to cry. It was so brutal. So, okay, that happened when I was maybe 24. So there's between when I was 11 and when I was 24. But the point is this, like when I really look at it, Andrew, I just tipped, I just closed out because I wasn't sure I was gonna get a second one, but it was just brutal. The guy was trying to look cool for the girl, probably. I think he was trying to get laid or something. But it's like, okay, those are two shitty events in my life, and there's others, but like, but that one's dramatic because very rarely is you go up to order something at the bar and somebody's like, go fuck yourself, right? And they're really mean. Like in my head, sometimes people are gonna say that to me when I just say, hi, I'm Stefan. But it doesn't normally happen like that, right? It's very rare like that people just are that abrasive and so it was very jarring. That was like my worst case scenario of like a social interaction. It's something very, very uncommon, right? I appreciate that. Michael's gonna vandalize it for me. But guys, if we really look at it though, it's like, those are two events out of like how many events of every single day in my life, there are countless events. There are so many things that have happened in my life that were things that didn't happen that way, right? Where I had great interactions with people, where I met new people and had wonderful relationships, where people like, you know, loved me for who I was. Like there's all these incredible things that have happened. And so even for those things, I can think back to those really jarring things and be scarred and traumatized and all of that. Or I cannot. I mean, even my dad dying fucking sucked, right? And I saw terrible things like happen as he was dying because his body was wasting away. And of course, like it was effective. It affected me. But like, I also knew even that. I'm like, I can let my dad's death define me and be like, oh, my dad died. Now I'm going to be an alcoholic, or I'm going to go back to using drugs like I did in my early 20s, or I can do all of these things. Or I'm like, okay, man, I can grieve and be sad. And then I can go on and, you know, just try to like move forward in the road and do the best I can and be as most effective, good human being I can in honor of his memory. So there's a decision to be made, even in something as severe as watching your father wilt away from you with like a severe cancer in a matter of 5 months, right? It's how you respond, responsibility. And very often we don't have these worst case scenarios. Okay, a couple more here, and then I'll open up to QAs. But I'm gonna check again, just to make sure. I know I'm talking a lot, but I think this is valuable, but please let me know if it's valuable and if this is good. Okay. Okay. Cool. All right. Awesome. Okay. A few more things I want to hit then. You know, one question, another question to ask yourself, I guess, because there's a lot of questions here, right? Is like, what's the downside to believing positive things are going to come your way, right? Like, what's the downside to believing in the best case outcome? And like, what I mean by that is like, I think sometimes we're afraid to be too optimistic because we don't want to be hurt or let down. Right? I think that's the big thing there. But what really happens when we're let down? So say I reach for the stars and I miss. What's the real downside? Does everyone look at me and say, okay, like, Stefan's a failure, or like, oh, he said he was going to do this and it didn't work out. Like, what a loser piece of shit. Like going back to the worst case scenarios, does that stuff happen very often? Like, no, right? Generally, like there is no downside except for what we make up in our head, the myths and stories we make up. If this doesn't work, it means this, and this. And then we think about it and we're like, we're the ones who are saying that's the case. Like nobody else feels that way. Like we've created this myth. We invent this whole set of like punishments for ourselves if like things don't work, right? But like nobody else really ever imposes those onto us in general. Like it's never, like, again, it's hardly ever as bad as we think it's going to be. And so I really feel like when I look at it that way, it helps me to be really optimistic. Again, a really cheery example, and I'm actually not being sarcastic, is with my first health supplement company. I was like, we're going to do $150 million. And, I got everyone on board, everyone believed it. And the first year we did $1 million and lost 200,000. And I almost just folded it up and went and got a job as a copy chief. And the next year we did 23 million. And then we kind of like ended up, I went and started doing other stuff and kind of like shifted focus. I still like had assets for the company, but I didn't like focus on acquisition as much at that point. But then it's like, okay, like I shot for 150 million and I got to 23 million. Am I that upset about that? Like I became a millionaire for the first time. Am I really that upset? But I'd rather just shoot really big. And even if I fail, right? Yeah, even if I fail, like, okay, whatever. I'm still getting like pretty tremendous results. And even like, but even for something as simple as like, I'm gonna get this job, right? And then like, I do think you have like a detachment from outcomes on some certain level, right? If you're like, I want to get this job, I really believe it's gonna happen, and you don't get the job, it can't be like, what does that mean? It just means you didn't get the job. But did it hurt you by believing you would get it? I think no. I would say it probably helps you because you probably acted with more confidence, felt better. You were better for your communications with the potential client, all these things because you believed you were going to get it. And if it doesn't work out, then it just didn't work out and now you can just go on. But if you get it, the upside of believing that the best case is going to happen is so much better than the downside of what happens when the best case doesn't happen. You know what I mean? It's like, okay, here's like a flat line, the outcome doesn't happen like you want. Okay, this is like your downside. The outcome happens like you want. This is your upside. So when you look at it that way, why wouldn't you just always go and reach for the upside and always believe in the upside, right? I really believe that that's super important. Like nobody, if you don't get the client, not like a bunch of people know about it except for you. And then what you again, it's you're the one who could be, attributing things to it and saying, it's because I'm a piece of shit. It's because I'm a fraud. It's because I'm not really that good. It's because I'm, all this stuff. But it's like, that's probably not what happened, right? Probably just, who knows? Maybe they didn't hire anybody. Maybe somebody, was more qualified. Fine, no problem, right? Are we going to focus on the outcome that didn't happen, or are we going to keep focusing on the outcome we want to happen? And if we keep focusing on the outcome that we want to happen, it's a much better outcomes can happen. Yeah, John, I am talking about risk versus reward, and I'm looking at asymmetrical risk, right? This is what Nassim Taleb talks about, and what Sam Zell talks about, people talk about. Asymmetrical because your downside's here, your upside's here. So asymmetrical risk and going after things that have this huge asymmetry in your upside is one of the biggest hacks to getting leverage into being really good in your life. Because like when you're wrong, a little downside. When you're right, a massive amount of upside. Cool. Another question, and there's only a couple more before we move to the QA, is that maybe ask yourself or think about it, right? Do people make their own reality? Not maybe you don't, but do other people? Think about all like people who are really successful, and if you look at them, and it comes back to like what they believe, but a lot of you guys have probably seen it. There's like that person who just wills himself to victory or to success, who just knows that it's going to happen, and they create that reality for themselves, right? And so if they're able to do it, and they are, like everybody does it. I feel like I do it. I feel like I've willed myself to where I am, right? But if I'm allowed to do it, or somebody else is allowed to do it, why aren't you allowed to do it? Like, because the big secret, it's not like we all know everyone has their origin story. Everyone started somewhere else. And then, they got to this place where they wanted to go. No problem, Eric. I'm glad you're enjoying this, right? But like, if you feel that way about it, then like, why aren't you enabled to do that? Why can't you do it either? Why can't you, like, people respond to those to make their own reality. I mean, look at fucking like Tai Lopez, right? Who people want to laugh about Tai Lopez. It's like, okay, yeah, sure. The guy makes between like $7 and $10 million a month, owns a bunch of companies, has done all of this crazy stuff. And like, when he first started out, he was like, I'm an expert. And everyone was like, go fuck yourself. And he's like, no, I am. And he just kept putting money into Facebook ads and like getting his name out there and doing his own personal branding and all these things. And now, like, again, you may still not like Tai Lopez, but he basically has created this whole reality for himself where there's a massive amount of people who believe that about Tai Lopez. You could look at Grant Cardone in a similar fashion with like what he's done. There's all these people, but if they're allowed to do it, why can't you do it? And there's no reason why, right? The only reason is because you're telling yourself that you're not allowed to do it. You're putting these limitations on yourself, but where are they coming from? Are they real? Are they true? Right? Like, is it because you're not good enough? Like, why? And it's like, well, because in 5th grade, I jumped off a thing and people thought I was fat, so now I can't do anything in my life. Because that was kind of how I felt for a while. For a long time. The Kardashians are another example. I remember being really little and my mom talking about Madonna. This is Madonna in like the early 90s and how she was like, Madonna just decided she was going to be famous and just became famous. And I didn't really understand it at the time. And then I got older and I'm like, oh shit, like massive respect for Madonna because she, did something incredible here. So think about that. Like, right? Why? Because the big secret for so much of this stuff is like, you get to, which are true limitations. Alberto, save that question. We'll come back to it. I promise. Okay. Like you get to choose how you respond. And like, generally the person pulling you back is yourself. And even when you miss, I guess to answer your question a little bit, Alberto, it's like, you don't really know unless you try, right? You don't know what your true limitations are. And so like, I'd rather, going back to what I said before about, believing that positive things will come your way and the upside, like I'd rather shoot really high and like think my limitations are limitless. It's kind of, not the right way to say that, but like believe that there are no limits more or less within, obviously reason. Like I don't believe I can fly and jump off a fucking building and die. I'd rather do that and find out than I would, just like never trying and never getting to experience all these incredible things in life. And that's a tragedy to me is when people, never live up to their full potential because they're afraid. Cool. So I'm just kidding. Cartman, the South Park episode. Yeah, totally. Okay. So, all right, 3 more things here. And I know I had another question. Elizabeth, you sent me a question. Please save that as well and then repeat it in a minute when we get to the questions because I'm not going to be able to keep track of it. So, yeah, how do you view most other people you meet? Here's one more, right? For imposter syndrome and feeling like when you're in a room with other people or when you just meet strangers, if you have like kind of social anxiety, which I honestly kind of have, being on Adderall because my ADD helps some, but I get nervous or anxious if I'm in a room of people I don't know. I'm not great about walking up to people being like, hi, I'm Stefan, and like having this whole conversation. I'd like to, right? It's something I think I'll continue to work on, but I don't. And I'd love to. And Laura and I used to joke that they should do like a pickup course for couples for just making other couple friends. Because we've been at like social events where there's other couples and we just stand around awkwardly, talk with each other the whole time and leave. And like, we don't just go up to another couple and go like, hey, how's it going? I'm Stefan, this is Laura. Like, how weird is it, right? It's not that weird. Not doing it's not weird. It's so weird that we feel like we can't do that. But if you think about, and you kind of flip it and go empathetic, right? When you meet other people, or if you're at like a place socially and somebody comes up and they're like, hey, I'm whoever, and they start talking to you, like in your head, you're probably not like, fuck this guy. Again, right? Nobody really feels that way. Maybe you feel like, I'm busy, so I don't have time to talk. And you tell me, hey man, I'm actually kind of busy, but it's really great to meet you. Or, you talk for a minute and leave. But nobody's like, hates you for doing that. Like, or you don't hate anybody for doing that. And nobody else feels that way either. So like, getting mentally to be like, why would I feel this way about everybody, right? Why do they all feel differently than I do? And if you talk to 10 people in a room, they all have the same experience that you have. It's not like, you like people, but everyone else secretly hates you. It's illogical. It doesn't make sense. The 2 last things I want to cover here, I know I'm going way more than 10 minutes, but whatever. One of them would be, this is just a little one. Sorry, my headset's dying on me, so I'm gonna turn it off. Two more quick things here. Like one would be the difference between getting what you want versus getting what you need. And I talked about this with a friend today, which is that, if I look back in my life, I very often don't get what I wanted, but I almost always end up getting what I needed. And there's a huge difference there. Like if I got, and I said this to my friend when I was talking with him, if I got everything that I wanted in life, my life would suck right now. Right? Like I would be working, I said this on the call with Justin, I'd be working at Enterprise Rental Car, living in Pensacola, Florida, and that's about it, right? Because when I was in my mid-20s or early 20s, all I wanted in life was to get a job with Enterprise, right? But then I didn't, and ended up through this journey meeting Laura, discovering copywriting, entrepreneurship, all of these things because I didn't get what I wanted, right? So I just think, and it's a total Rolling Stone like tip of the cap to them, the Rolling Stones, but it's just super true. And I do look at that, even if I've journaled stuff or if I've done like, kind of like thinking about what I want in life, and I look back, and usually the big things like actually did happen. They may have just not happened in the way that I thought they would. So there's a huge, huge difference between focusing on like what you want and then accepting that generally the universe is going to give you what you need. Like Ian Stanley, my good friend, talks about the surrender experiment where you surrender to things, and it's almost like surrendering to that fact. And the last thing before we go into QAs is if you're able to identify patterns of behavior or cycles in your life, which is something that I only really started doing, I guess, in my 20s, but it was really valuable. So, one that I've talked about a little bit publicly is that when I was like addicted to like cocaine, which was in my early 20s, basically I was part of a music startup and I got like addicted to coke. But cocaine addiction, for those of you who have never done it or never been addicted to cocaine, it's not necessarily like in the movies where, you're sort of like doing it all day, every day. Part of it can be that way, but for the most part, it's not like, you sit around shivering all day like a junkie. What I found is like, I did go through that period where I did it like almost every day, and I was able to kick that part actually pretty easily, but I couldn't kick doing it like once a week to once every 10 days. And the reason why, what would happen is like, I realized there was a cycle. So, okay, I do cocaine, next morning I drink a ton, next morning I feel like shit, I just stay at home all day, like having foie gras and watching movies, and I self-flagellate, like I hate myself, I'm so mad at myself, I'm not gonna do it again. There's this whole shame thing that happens, but then I'm also like oddly comfortable in that shame because I'm like numb, and then this blanket watching TV and not moving from the couch, and like I've absolved myself of all of these like sort of like responsibilities in life, so I'm almost using it as a way to like relax, force myself to relax. And then like the next day I feel better. A couple days in, two things happen actually. By the third or fourth day, I'm feeling like a lot better. And then between the fifth and seventh day, either I have a day where I'm just fucking super irritable, just super mad, everything sucks, and I'm like, I need a drink. Like I've had a busy week and I need to blow off steam. I need a drink. Or I may feel really good and be like, man, like I've had a really good like couple days. Things are going well, and it feels like forever ago that I last went on this crazy coke binge. Like, so yeah, I'm gonna go and have some drinks. Either way, you go out, one drink, suddenly you find a way to get yourself way more drunk than you expected to get. Like you're the one pushing for shots, you're drinking shots. Then you're like, oh, hey, now that I'm drunk, I need cocaine to sober up. You get cocaine, you go through this whole night of doing coke and drinking, you feel like shit, you're smoking cigarettes, all this crap, you wake up, you start the whole cycle over again. I wasn't able to break that cycle though until I realized I was doing it. For a long time, I didn't realize that was the cycle. And then it was so fucking obvious. I'm like, that's like the most obvious thing ever. Even with my Holy Land Health supplement company, what I would do is I realized like when I started really making money, I would go to I was living by myself in Vegas because Laura and I were, for one part, we were on a break, and then she was in grad school in New York and I was in Vegas with my company. So I would go out to have like dinner by myself at a casino, and I would like have a couple martinis, get drunk, gamble, and then I would lose like, I don't know, like a couple $1,000, right? But I would do like, I realized there's this correlation between every time I'd had a really good week, I would go drink and I'd lose. And I used to you don't lose every time you gamble, right? If you play blackjack, you're supposed to win like 49% of the time. But I was like finding ways to lose to basically like punish myself for making money. And like, but it took me a long time to realize that. And I'm like, holy shit, like I'm literally going out. I wasn't doing like cocaine anymore, but like I'm going out getting drunk and then gambling as a way to punish myself and get rid of this money that I've gotten. And like, why am I doing that? Do I feel like I don't deserve the money? Do I feel like, guilty, right? All of these questions started coming to my mind, but I was able to break it once I realized the cycle. So once you realize these cycles that happen, and a lot of like what, a lot of it too, I realized was me trying to handicap myself. Even today, if I go through where I start drinking every day, honestly, I'm drinking every day right now, but I'm having like 2 Bud Lights by the pool and I'm not hungover and I'm like, it's good. I'm not like doing shots or anything like that. So, but if I go through a period where I'm like drinking like scotches every day for a while, like, and then I feel like I'm tired in the morning and not as effective, I'll realize what I'm doing to like handicap myself so that I don't achieve the goals in my life I want to achieve. It's a crazy realization. Yeah. So Bailey, to your question and a couple people's question, once you realize that there's that cycle, how do you break it? So obviously I'm not a doctor, a psychologist, or an expert or whatever it is, but the big things that I've realized for this cycle, or there's a couple. One is once you realize it, it helps, right? Because you have to realize you're in the cycle. And then like, once you realize that, there's always that kind of trigger moment where you're about to go to the, bar and have drinks, to like celebrate or because you had a bad day. But then you're like, all right, well, let's be honest with myself. That's going to lead to me doing cocaine. Or there's that moment of you go to dinner and you're like, now I'm gonna go gamble. And you're like, well, okay, this is like a cycle I go through where I'm gonna do that. So part of it is like trying to really be hyper aware. But really what we want to do is give ourselves, again, this is just my approach to it, and don't, sue me if this doesn't work for you. Is like, then I give myself permission. I'm like, all right, we can do that. We can totally do it. So let's take let's take a minute or two and just make sure that we really want to do it. Because the second we give ourselves permission to do it, like we remove all of this guilt and shame. Like, because suddenly if we've told ourselves, and we have to truly believe it, but if we truly believe that, it's okay, that like we can do it and we're not gonna be mad at ourselves and we're not gonna like punish ourselves, and we like truly believe that, and we've truly made that accord, and then we go out and do it, then is it the healthiest behavior? No. But you take away a lot of the fun, because even the next morning, you wake up and you're like, you want to start getting mad at yourself, and you're like, well, I mean, I had this conversation with myself and I told myself I was going to do it. So if anything, you kind of shortcut the guilt. And then when there's no guilt there, it actually is like starting to break the pattern, at least in my experience, because then like, well, if there's no guilt, like there's no fun. And like, cause suddenly you've broken the cycle that you're going through before. So like one thing is like, but what also happens is once you just take a couple of minutes and you give yourself permission and you remove the guilt from it, you'll kind of find that you stop wanting to do it all the time. Again, at least for my experience, because I know I've said like my experience like 10 times, but the reason why is because like suddenly, again, once you remove this taboo, it's not as much fun. Right? When somebody tells you not to do something, it's way easier to do it. But when someone's like, yeah, go for it, you lose your motivation a lot faster. So for me, it's giving myself total permission to like fall, even if it's getting like to like a funk or getting angry or depressed or, whatever it is. If you just give yourself permission instead of trying to fight it, and like, because it's a fetish. You fighting that stuff is like a fetish for yourself. Some part of your subconscious is like getting off by the struggle and the fight and by you losing. It's like a sadistic thing that's happening. But when you take all that away and you're like, all right, yeah, cool. All right, that's what I want to do. I'll be depressed. Then it's like, then you sit around and you're like, well, I know I can be depressed, but like, why do that? Like, why am I doing this? And it just takes all the fun out of it. So for me, that's how I found as the best way to kind of break the cycle. Again, other people may have other things. So, okay, that was a lot of talking. I'm going to stop sharing my screen here. And then I'm going to, if I can figure out how to do that, there we go. We'll go to QAs here. So, as far as questions go, I'm going to start kind of answering them kind of as much as I can. If people, if I don't get to one, I will apologize. I see some coming in. That's perfect. I'll start with Andy Jeffs here in a second. For people who asked questions before, feel free to like repeat them if I don't get them right here. So Andy asked if I have a mindset routine. I don't have a routine as much as I have habits. And a lot of those habits are kind of what I shared previously. So, one would be if I'm about to make what's potentially a self-destructive decision, give myself permission to do that, but pausing and being like, all right, let me just, stop for a minute and make sure that I really want to, because I totally can. Or when things come my way and stopping for a minute and being like, okay, I get to choose how I respond. I mean, what's funny is like Sesame Street, which I watch because of my daughter, they teach breathing where when the kids are upset, they teach the kids like, all right, stop for a second. Do you want to breathe with me? And the kids do like a 20-second breath, and they teach this on Sesame Street, and the kids do the breathing, or sometimes like the Muppets do it. And then, do you feel better? Yeah. So you're essentially just doing that in your life, and you're doing that before you respond, before you take action, all of these things. So that like 30 seconds of mindfulness really helps. But I go back to these almost like, maxims for myself, or dictums, and I apply those. David, you asked about time management. I promise I will. Let me stick on mindset, and I'll get to time management at the end. Connor, mindset wise, what changed for you when you started earning a lot of money? How was the adjustment, and how did you stay motivated? Yeah, it was weird, Connor. The big thing for me is that at first I got less motivated for sure. And I just sort of coasted and chilled when I was starting to make a lot of money, and it was through a health company where I wasn't having to do anything new. And that was cool. And then the reason I think I'm so motivated today and now is because I really did attach it to like a why and a higher purpose and a higher value and mission and things like that. So, today with a lot of what I do with like coaching, training, teaching, mentoring, all those things, like I hear from people I've interacted with every day about how I'm changing their lives, whether that's, they've got new clients and their income increased and now they're able to move to a nicer apartment or a house, or they're able to like get their wife something or their husband something, or their company has grown and they're hiring more people. All these deeper things, like that's what makes me motivated now. And when I realize that, plus the fact that then for what I'm doing is so aligned, I'm getting to like be a bit philosophical, right? I get to like write, I get to teach, I get to do all these things that I love doing. And so that alone is what really motivates me. And then just knowing that there's so many people out there who can use my help who have no idea who the fuck I am. I mean, like the vast majority of the people out there have no idea who I am, 99.99999%. And it's not an ego play, because that was the biggest thing, going back to mindset really quick. When I was going to first, not the whole thing's mindset, but when I was first going to put myself out in public, I was like, am I doing this for my ego? Am I doing this because like, I want to be like, become famous or become known, and I want people to tell me how great I am? And I had to have this whole internal conversation with myself and really, really evaluate it. And I'm sure there are people out there who think that I do, like that is part of my motivation. But what was the reason I did it now, or did it like a year and a half ago versus like before that, is because I really felt comfortable in that, no, the reason I'm doing this is because I get to help people. And I get to really make an impact on people's lives. And then that's what's propelled me. And then hearing people, the results from people propels me further, and that keeps me motivated. So the money is great. Like I still love money. I'm a capitalist. I like money. But you'll find very quickly that there's a diminishing returns on that. Like as weird as it sounds, like the difference between making 100,000 and 200,000 actually isn't like a crazy difference, like over time, I know it is, like you can buy more shit. I get it. But the way you feel, like the fired up part just is different. And so that was it for me. Let's see here. Brandon asked, have you ever had a limiting belief when it comes to making a lot of money? I feel like I'm subconsciously terrified of making a lot of money. Like it's not possible for me, so I sabotage myself. Yeah, totally, dude. I absolutely have. I think for a long time, I think that again, maybe was why I'd go to the casino after I started making money and like give it away. I think it does come back to like self-worth and like, the feelings of, okay, like I am, because it's not about the money. It's about you feeling like you're not good enough and you don't deserve it. Right. So, I've seen therapists before. I saw a therapist back in November of 2018, more for like my ADD and stuff like that, but he helped me with a lot of these things. So like first of all, I recommend people see like therapists, and things like that can really help them to work through that stuff. A good one. There's a lot of shitty ones. I don't think you should get married. Don't have the sunk cost thing where you go to one therapist or not the right one, but you're like, well, I guess I got to keep seeing this person. Find one who you feel really good when you talk to them. But yeah, I think it really just comes back down to your self-worth and like, and then I think also maybe Brandon, back to like visualizing, what are you going to do with the money, right? Maybe part of the fear is an unknown or an uncertainty about it, right? Are you going to take the money and are you going to fuck it all up? Are you going to become an asshole? Are you going to, have problems? Is it going to create issues? Like there's an unknown for you. I think if you visualize like a clear path to like what life looks like, what it looks like with that money, what you're doing, who you're helping, tying it to your bigger purpose and your bigger why, then it becomes a lot easier to accept that money, because now you're like a steward of it. You're just taking that money, you're deploying it towards these deeper objectives. I think the fear that a lot of people get with money is the unknown that comes from it. And so if you remove that, I think that really helps a lot. Tom Merritt said, assume you can be optimistic about hitting your goals, but there are risks along the way to hitting them. For example, mid-risk, legal risk, advertising in the health niche. How do you get comfortable with risks that are not fully in your control, super detrimental if they happen, but at the same time, super unlikely? Dwelling on these things can really screw up your mindset, but ignoring them causes even more problems. Tom, yeah, that's a complex one, but a common one for people, especially in like the health marketing space. I think you just have to you have to accept it, because again, we go back to symmetry and like the upside versus the downside. And I also think you can work to minimize your risks, right? Like in the world of like health, for example, like health marketing, health supplements, like you're not actually going to go to jail. I mean, unless you sell like, I don't know, like rat poison and pretend it's like, Garcinia cambogia, like you're probably not going to go to jail. Really what's going to happen is you might get a fine. It's going to be a huge pain in the ass. It's extremely rare. The only people who go to jail were people who ignored multiple warnings, tried to sue the FTC, kept selling stuff, like all this crazy stuff. Like, unless you're going to be that guy, like you're not going to go to jail. That doesn't mean like a fine would be fun, or giving the money back would be fun. And it means that like it could be a huge pain in the ass. But I think you have to accept the risk there if you're going to do it, or you have to change it and do something else. I mean, really, right? That's the decision you have to make. But then you have to understand that to your point, the upside, outweighs the downside tremendously. And I think also talk to people who've gone through it. Like, Jason Akatiff, who runs a Facebook or an affiliate network now, he's banned by the FTC from ever selling weight loss. And Jason Akatiff's a multimillionaire who flies private all the time, skis with his kids, and is having a great life. I had to go meet with a bunch of district attorneys in California for something a while ago. And it was like scary, but then they basically were like, oh, hey, just change a couple of things on your page. And I was like, okay. It's like not as bad as it seems like it's going to be. So I think about that too. What is is it the worst case scenario, and what does that look like, and what actually happens in my life if that happens? So I think if you think about it, instead of being afraid of it happening, visualize, you don't want to like visualize it happening, but like think about what would it look like, what would happen if that were to come true. And that takes away a lot of the fear from it, I think. Julie Lawson said, do you simply change your mindset by making a firm decision? I think yeah, Julie, but I think it does. It's a habit too. It's practice. It's like anything else. You have to build this muscle, right? There's like a mindset muscle. And I think you have to accept that at first, like you're not going to just it's not like you just flip a switch and your mindset's perfect, but the more reps you get, the more repetition you get, the more you practice it, and the more you become aware, right? The biggest thing is awareness. And you realize, oh, hey, wow, cool. I'm proud of myself because I shifted my mindset in this one instance. Like every one of those little wins kind of snowballs. And the more of those that happen, the more you start to feel good, the more you realize your life is changing, the more you can kind of build on that momentum. And then as you're doing it, you do have to keep aware of those cycles and patterns, because what can happen is you make changes, you start feeling good. Then that part of your subconscious mind that was, causing all the problems in the first place sees you coming up and tries to reach up and yank you back down. And so that's where being aware of those patterns and cycles and habits in your life comes in really valuable. Andrea, I know you had 3 questions for you here. Time management, I'm going to come back to. Do I have any routine? I'm going to go to the last one first, and I'll come back to time management. Do you have any kind of routine, hacks, tricks, secrets, or something similar that you have developed over the years to have this type of mindset you have today that is truly inspirational? Well, thank you for saying it's inspirational. But really, it goes back to what I just said. It's just developing habits, and it's if you have these frameworks in mind, then it helps, because again, every time something happens, like every time there's like a crisis, I'm like, wait a minute, what's my philosophy on crises? It's that they aren't actually crises, they're just challenges that need to be solved, and that's the nature of business. And you're like, oh, okay, fine. If that's true, so how do I accept it? Or if you're really panicked about something, wait a minute, okay, well, what is the real worst case scenario? What really happens? What's the likelihood of that? How many times have I really had a worst case scenario in my life? Why is this going to be one of them? It's probably not. What if it's a mild case scenario? Well, this would be annoying. Would it really change things for me? Well, not really. So it's having the right questions, asking the right questions, and then based on that, having this criteria that then that helps you to then keep putting things in your life through that. So those are like the filters I use. Peter asks, what do you find to be the biggest challenge mindset for yourself right now, and how are you dealing with it? Right now, sorry, my daughter was crying a little bit, hopefully. And she cried. She's a 2-year-old. She's fine, I'm sure. But I think the biggest one for me right now, maybe, Peter, is feeling like I'm gonna become a lot better known. Like I'm doing this the Jeff Hayes' docuseries thing with like Tucker Max and Jay Abraham and Dean Graziosi and all these people. And like, I mean, I don't know how much it'll be viewed, but like, you know, it may help me get viewed a lot. And I've got a Forbes article coming out that I'm going to be featured in this month, and I'm going to be on this and that, and I'm doing it kind of intentionally, because again, I want to reach as many people as I can and share stuff like what we're doing right now with as many people as I can if it helps them. And I just want to help people. It makes me, I'm addicted to helping people. It feels fucking good. But I think the mindset there is just continue to get comfortable with that and being like, you know, when that happens, there's gonna be certain people who make fun of me or say, you know, like I talk too fast. I have a slight lisp, which is true. I'm, you know, dumb. I'm like all these things that people are gonna say. Like just being like knowing that that's gonna happen and being okay with it. And I am, but you know, I'm sure that some people will say things to me in the months and years and et cetera to come that will, you know, make me feel crappy. So my challenge will be just continuing to go back to what I'm sharing with you guys here and not letting it really dictate my life, focusing on the good, not the bad. Susan asked about talking about imposter syndrome. Yeah. So, you know, as far as imposter syndrome goes, like how do you get over it? I mean, I guess one part of it goes back to thinking about, you know, everything. Okay, everyone in the room was just like you at one point. Even the big people were just like you. Nobody actually thinking about your actual interactions with people. Like, have you, again, how many times have you ever said, like, and I brought this up during my Copy Accelerator event when I was trying to let people with imposter syndrome know that they're lucky, or not lucky, they're welcome, yeah, and safe where we at our event. I mean, how many times have you ever gone up to somebody and said, "Hey, I'm so-and-so," and they said, "Fuck you," right? It doesn't happen. Sorry, guys, 1 second. I got a sad daughter potentially here. Oh, I don't know. I think maybe the tablet might have gotten taken from her, but you know, happens. Like this kind of stuff just like doesn't happen. So when you think about it that way, and you think about what are the worst case scenarios, I think that helps a lot. And then I think you just think about how welcoming are people. Like, you know, challenge yourself to like talk to one person who's kind of like a big deal, or maybe like 3 people who are like a big deal. And there's quotes for that, right? And see what happens. Like, how do they actually treat you, right? Like, and again, because you know, sure, it's possible they're gonna be kind of an asshole. It's unlikely they're not gonna be like a total asshole. When you actually look at like reality versus like your expectations and realize that most people are nice and gracious and kind and loving and caring and supportive, like I think that helps you to start to kind of get past that. So those are big things I think about there. Alberto said, man, I know we have a lot of questions going on, but I'm good rapid firing through these as much as I can here. In your opinion, what is the best way to build a habit? Alberto, for me, like I think about that, I go back to Stephen Covey and the 7 habits of highly effective people. I like the idea of, he talks about how like these kind of like small, like private victories precede public victories. So essentially like getting little wins in your life, build momentum. And then as you continue to have those, it becomes easier to get bigger, more public wins. So little things like, you know, brushing your teeth when you don't want to, or making your bed every morning, or, you know, you work out every Monday even though you don't want to, or whatever it is, these little things that you don't want to do. When you do them, whenever you do the hard shit you don't want to do, and if you do it in the start of your day is almost always better because you're so amped up because you're like, all right, I already did this thing I didn't even want to do. So I kind of take that off everything. I just sort of like, I celebrate even the small victories, and I try and build as many of those as I can. And over time, that creates momentum for me where I then can parlay that into like bigger victories and bigger habits. So even just building small habits and letting them kind of snowball into bigger habits. Ian said, I get too obsessed with learning everything and trying to plan shit out perfectly. How do you know when you're ready to just go for it and do the damn thing? Good question. I'm going to take a sip of water here because I'm talking straight for an hour already. Might have had water go down the wrong pipe. So if I start coughing, that'll be fun. I'm a big fan of, the way I look at it, Ian, is like, it's never going to be perfect anyway, right? And perfection is the enemy. So like, I just sort of feel like things are fluid, and that's actually part of the art of like marketing and business and entrepreneurship and everything. Like it's adjusting. There's like the super cliche thing about being an entrepreneur is jumping out of a plane and building the parachute on the way down. But I really believe that that's true. And so for me, when I look at it, like, I'm never going to get it right anyway. So the sooner I launch it, the faster I'm going to be able to start tweaking it and modifying it and make it right. So that's pretty much my approach every single time for that. Sorry, I don't know. She's like the worst tantrum she's had. I know she's a 2-year-old, so I'm not really apologizing for her, but yeah. Okay, Elizabeth asked me, how do you overcome that guilt regarding money? For me, I grew up in a religious anti-money, anti-materialism family and struggle with self-sabotage when I hit certain income. Elizabeth, I would go back to what I said previously. And again, I'm keeping the questions up in the order they came. So I know there's new questions down below and I haven't gotten to those yet. But I would look at, Elizabeth, like the way of like, first of all, I mean, like, do we want to let like that upbringing define you and what your family believed? And were those beliefs, do they serve you or do they do a disservice, right? And then I would also tie it back to, again, like, what are you going to do with money when it comes to you, right? Are you going to go, be a hedonist, sane worshiper and do a bunch of drugs and, be an evil person realistically, right? Are you going to help people? Are you going to like donate to charity? Are you going to be able to provide a better foundation for your family, whatever it may be? So if we focus at it, think about that. And then you kind of take it and you look at like, okay, well, what serves me more? Feeling like, money's the root of all evil. And if I have it, and feeling that way and not being able to help a whole lot of people, or not believing that, having it and being able to help a ton of people. So that's where I think like, that's how you, for me, at least, you kind of get past that hang up. Robert asked, do you notice it at a point you stopped caring about it when everyone was talking about you? If so, was that a big positive? Yeah, totally. Honestly, huge one. I remember talking to a friend who I was like, I guess in my mid 20s and he was in his early 40s at the time. And he was like, the only difference between, me at your age and me now is that I just care way less about what people think. And I didn't fully appreciate it. But now I do. Cause like when you stop caring about what other people think about you, it's incredibly freeing. And again, what you just tend to find is like, people are drawn to authenticity. But when you really think about it, when we all know those people who are like outspoken, fun, and really authentic, we're always drawn to those people. We're never drawn to the people who are phony, right? And so why would it be any different for you? So for me, it's been really empowering. Okay, let's see. Andy, my boss's mom just died of cancer. Any advice for him to stay positive and move forward? Andy, the best advice I would give is just like knowing that, first of all, everybody grieves in their own way. I think that's really important. That was the best advice I got when my dad died, was like, you don't feel like you have to be a certain way. Like, you may cry, a ton. You may be depressed for 2 months. You may just be totally like happy and seem like kind of weirdly unaffected. Like whatever happens, like that's your own grieving process. Everyone's process is different. So I think knowing that is really helpful because it helps you to accept that is the case. Like when my dad died, I cried a little bit, when I saw his dead body, when I came to the room and saw his dead body and they took it out of the room. I cried a little bit at the funeral, but then like 6 months later in a movie theater in Fort Lauderdale, Florida with Laura, at the end of a movie, I heard a voicemail from my mom where she referenced my dad and he was still alive. And I lost it and cried for an hour straight, walked out of the movie theater just sobbing, got into the car in a parking garage and just cried for like 30 minutes before I could drive, just cried like my eyes out. And that was the time I most cried. And like, that's okay. That's how I processed it. I processed it at the time. I had to be there. I had to be like the man, right? I had to be the rock for my mom and my sister. I had to be sort of like this person to lift everybody else up. And then suddenly I did. And that's when it happened. So that's some of the best advice I can give. Rowie, how do we identify and overcome our limiting beliefs? That's a really good question too. I think the biggest thing is like, do they serve me or do they not serve me? I think if you look at it, like you have to look at almost the pattern, go back to the patterns of your behavior too. It's like, if you notice a pattern happening, or if you notice like an outcome you don't like happening consistently, right? Do you have a consistent, like something that consistently happens in your life that you wish didn't happen? And you're like, yeah. Like, okay, well then like look what leads up to that. And you're almost always going to find that there's this fucking pattern. I don't know why I'm cussing so much, but that there's this pattern that happens and it's going to like happen again and again. So if you realize that, you say, okay, well, why is that pattern happening? And then it becomes introspective. Like, what are my like beliefs that are, do I have beliefs that are maybe like deep seated? Go back to like, you have to go back into your childhood. And from there, you have to see a therapist probably. But that's the best I can do for that one. Bailey asked, have I noticed any longer term self-destructive cycles? The biggest one for me, Bailey, would be that, guys, I'm sorry, I got the daughter crying. I've got the gardeners outside, trying to bring as much value as I can, but this is the tough one here. It would probably be like, taking on too much, thinking I can do too much at one time. Like that's generally been the biggest one for me. Like every 10 years, I try to do too many things and take on too many things. And that's me. Guys, one second, guys. My daughter's gonna go for a walk, so the crying is gonna be finished. But because like that's something I did when I was like 19, 20, 21 in that music business. We tried to like do too much at once and failed. And I started trying to do that again in 2018 and realized I was overextended and I was doing a bunch of stuff mediocrely instead of doing a few things really well. So for me, that's been the biggest kind of pattern in my life. That I've noticed to start to say, I mean, but I'd like to think now I've learned. I think I made the mistake once when I was young and let myself off the hook. I think it's less excusable that I made it the second time, but I'd like to think that the third time it starts to happen, I'll be more self-aware and I won't. Cause I learned from it the first time, but then I kind of like, I forgot after 10 years. So the goal now is to not forget after 10 years or 20 years, but to just, and who knows? And if I do, that's okay. And I'll just have to learn the lesson again, but I hopefully will just learn it this time. Rowie asked, do you have a morning and night ritual? Yeah, my morning ritual is pretty much like, I wake up, I drink coffee right away. I wake up around between 5 and 6 a.m. Really, it's between 5 and 5:30 a.m. normally. I go downstairs. I usually get on my computer and I don't necessarily go right to emails and stuff like that. Sometimes I will. I'll clean my inbox up. I won't actually respond to a lot of emails, but I'll clean it up because there's basically 3 or 4 types of emails I get every morning. So I've got like new opt-ins for my list. So it's great. Those go in a folder. There's like other people's autoresponders and then like marketing emails, which I want to collect. Those go in a folder. There's junk and trash, which is great. Highlight all that, delete it. Business receipts in a folder, just, or, maybe a bill came through. And there's stuff I really need to respond to, and that just stays in my inbox and I start. But I don't necessarily respond to everything. I think almost it just gives me this like feeling of order and accomplishment. And like now when I go back to actually start working, my inbox is way more like manageable and I don't feel overwhelmed. From there, I'll honestly just like kind of do me stuff. Like I'll read either some newspapers for half an hour, or I'll read a book for a while. And then I'll jump in and I'll basically respond to messages, do all that kind of stuff. I write my daily email around between 7 and 8 o'clock normally, send it out. Then I'll jump into like my deep work activity normally for the day. And that's hopefully gonna be from between about 8 to like 10:30 or 11. And that's a huge block of time where I'm getting my biggest needle mover done. This is going into the time stuff too, which you guys have asked about, right? So now, okay, cool. I had like my sort of like, I ease in my day. I've responded to stuff, I've done the admin things. I've got my email out, which is a needle mover for me. And now I've usually got this chunk of time that's uninterrupted where now I can focus on my deep work and whatever's most important for me to be doing in the day. So that's from my day kind of thing into my morning. The nighttime routine is really just family stuff. And after my daughter goes to bed, it's either lounging and watching like Netflix or reading, going to bed between 10 and 11 every night. I read in bed for about 20 to 30 minutes. And that's really about it. There's nothing deeper than that really. Besides like brushing my teeth and things of that nature. Eli, how important is it to remove people from your life with toxic and limiting beliefs? It's super important, Eli. I mean, going back to what I talked about at the beginning of how you're the sum of the 5 people you spend the most time with, which is entirely true. Yeah, toxic people just bring you down and they want to bring you down. And like, it's tough and I get it, but every person I see who struggles has those toxic people in their life still. And all the people I see who, and not just in their life, but I mean, they're like a big part of their life. They still go see them on weekends, they hang out, they make excuses for them, all this shit, right? And everyone I know who is a really high achieving, high performer and at their happiest has cut those people from their lives. It's like one of the most black and white things I've ever seen. There's certain exceptions, like with like celebrities maybe that have their old friend, but even then the celebrities end up fucking shit up and getting like a car crash or going to rehab or, but the ones who are really the most successful have made that decision and made that action every single time. And it doesn't mean you can't if they message you can text them back, but you just have to cut them from your life. It's tough. I know, I get it, but it's like, people want those types of people, not everybody, but those types of people, either they're trying to get you to bend to their will. So either like, there's like a constant power dynamic where it's like, okay, like they want you to constantly bend to their will, or you can try to get them to bend to your will, but both are exhausting, right? So how about instead of having this weird like Jedi mind like trick, like tug of war, what if you surround yourself with people who you're both just going up together? Like you're not trying to bend people to your will. You're just trying to like rise all ships up. And those people all feel the same way and you're all going that way. It's way easier, way more momentum to do that than to be in this weird tug of war where you're trying to like, either people are trying to manipulate you or you're trying to manipulate other people. I mean, it's exhausting. So yeah. Okay, cool. Sabith said, yeah, cool. I mentioned that I covered imposter syndrome. Connor, Rohi Shetty asked any book recommendations. 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. I would read that. The Big Leap, I would really read. I've recommended this book before. It's all about your upper limit problem and how we self-sabotage. Once we get to like our zone of genius, we find ways to pull ourselves back out of it. I think it's an extremely important book for that reason. I really like Nassim Taleb. He's kind of like intellectual and a little bit philosophical and at times a little pompous, but he has really good ideas. Anti-Fragile and Skin in the Game would be the 2 that I would especially look at. Those are a few there. Michael said, dude, you're making me really dig deep into my feelings about money. My dad went to school for years and ended up becoming a school principal, making $150K. My mind, I don't deserve to make that much money unless I go to school for as long as he did. How much money do I owe you for this session? Oh, thanks, man. Awesome. Mozakam asked if I'm ever, she asked me this privately, but are you ever going to create a course on starting a supplement business? Maybe. I've thought about it. I might. I want to do a course on freelancing really badly, like a whole program on just how to like crush it as a freelancer, because I think it's extremely valuable and can change. Like, I think copy is going to change a lot. You know, RMBC and teaching copy changes a lot of lives, but I think, you know, freelancing in general and those skills and getting clients is like one of the most life-changing things I could do with the opportunity to change the most lives. So I really want to do that. Jack, how much do you encourage having a great mentor to assist you with mindset, and what type of conversations you have with your mentor about mindset? Yeah, I really encourage it. It just comes down to like, mentors are weird because I don't know. I think mentorship is extremely important, but it's a weird dynamic because it's not like if somebody came up to me and just said, hey, can you mentor me? I'd probably say no. And it's not because I'm like a jerk. And in fact, I really want to. It's because I just don't know if I'd have the bandwidth to do it. I can mentor through my teaching, through my training, through my writing, through calls like this, but I don't know if I could, you know, have that intense personal relationship. And yet I do develop that with people. Normally it happens like from a transactional standpoint in the beginning, which is kind of strange. Either people have hired me in the past to do stuff, and then they kind of start mentoring me, and then I've done the same thing. I hire people and start mentoring them, or, you know, you join a mastermind, or you pay somebody for coaching or consulting, things like that. And it sounds weird because like, well, if they're my mentor, why do I have to pay them? But I think the reason is a lot of time because if your mentor is really someone like high level, then their time's extremely valuable. And it's sort of like it's almost like you have to. And over time, I think that goes away. Like there's somebody I do private coaching with who I love, and he pays me, but like, I've already thought about this and it basically told him as much. It was like, if whenever he wants to stop paying me, like I'll still be his mentor for life now, but we had to develop that relationship. So I'm not saying you have to go pay somebody tomorrow, but I think they're important. But if you don't have a real life mentor right now, then look at like books. You know, I think books, like people who their content they follow. I mean, you can be mentored, you know, through reading and watching videos. There's ways to have mentors without ever, you know, interacting with them, at least early on. Let's see here. Sam said, how do you think perfectionism slots in all this? Fear of failure gets addressed with the switches and patterns stuff we talked about, or something that needs extra attention. It definitely feels like a self-sabotage tool I'm addicted to. Yeah, Sam, I would just go back. And by the way, guys, we'll go for another like 5 to 10 minutes. If you need to get off, feel free to. But yeah, I want to answer as many of these as I can before my voice stops working here. But Sam, it goes back to like, does this really serve me? Like, what is the actual outcome with my perfectionism? Like, now what's my fear, right? Okay, I know what the outcome you're afraid of happening is. What actually happens when I do this perfectionism? Does it actually serve me? Does it serve my client? Does it serve other people? or is it actually detrimental and not helpful? And if you start kind of looking at that one, you really evaluate it and you think back through your life in those times, and then you think about what's happened when you haven't been perfect, you know, I think that can really help you to sort of shift your mindset around it. Bailey said, what about getting 90% of the way there on projects and then dropping it because it's not going to work? What if your one shot to meet John Carlton is in the John at a conference, is in the John at a conference and you don't want to be that fan? Bailey, to answer your first question, I think a lot of us do that. And again, the reason why is because they're fear of failure. But I think you just have to so you recognize it. And then I think you just have to think about, go back to the bigger picture. Like, what if I do this? There's two sides to it. One is like, okay, was this the right thing to do? Because sometimes maybe you did too many projects and it's good to abandon one, right? So give yourself permission. Fine. It's okay. Maybe you shouldn't have done this project. Fine. But if you do think if you really don't have a good reason why you shouldn't have done it, besides I'm not good enough, I suck, it's not going to, go well, I might fail. You think about, okay, well, what if I'm wrong? What if it does succeed? What is the outcome going to be? And again, I never really tie it to like money, like make a bunch of money. Like, okay, great. Well, like, cool. Like, what can I do with that money? Right. And so the way I'm looking at it, like, how could this change my life and other people's lives? And I'm looking at that part of it. And I'm like, okay. And so like, and then I'm just reminding myself about how I'm just calling myself out on it. I think you're a lot of it's there, Bailey, of being like, okay, like I know what I'm doing. I see this pattern, but like, I'm like, do I want to be that person, or should I just finish it and put it out there? And then like, if it doesn't work out, great. Cause that's the other thing too. Again, what's the worst case scenario? You finish it, you put it out and you fail. Okay. Then what? Well, that means the faster you fail, like the faster you get to move on to something that works. Right. So even you're actually being a dick to yourself. Like you're like kind of like going back to that weird fetishized like self-torture, right? By drawing it out and waiting, like you're essentially just like depriving yourself of this opportunity or the chance to have all these new additional opportunities in your life. Like you should be excited about a failure because now you can check it off the list and move on to something new, fun, and interesting, and fascinating. So the worst thing is like that 90% thing, and you drag it on and you guilt yourself and you feel crappy. Like that's all just like a sabotaging, self-flagellating cycle that is going on. But if you can just recognize all that and be like, yeah, I don't want to do that. I'll just launch it. And what really happens if I fail? What happens? Really, what happens? I wasted time. Okay, cool. Are you wasting time by spending the next 3 months kind of half doing it and half putting it off and procrastinating? Is that wasting time? Yeah, so you're going to waste time anyway. So might as well just get it out. And then it's actually way less of a waste of your time. People are going to think I'm a loser. Okay, are they? A, no. B, like, it's not how you start, it's how you finish. Every great entrepreneur, every great person has had all these failures. I can list you 1,000 failures I've had, dating back to childhood to like, yesterday. Great. People don't remember that. People like, in fact, people love when you talk about your failures because they can learn from them. And really, like, people don't think about your failures, they think about your victories, right? Michael Jordan, the super cliche, like, you miss 99% of the shots you don't take, or everyone remembers the shot he makes, or what, I don't know, whatever the fuck that cliche is. But the point is, like, people tend to remember like the great stuff, not the failures anyway. Let's go through a couple more here. The John Carlton one, I get it. I would probably just tell, I probably would do the same. I would maybe not say hi, but that's just me. So I don't know. I'm still working on that one. Or I'd be like, hey, John, my name's Stefan. I'm a really big fan of yours. I know we're both in the bathroom. I'm not trying to be that guy. I'd love to see if I can come see you later and say hello, but just wanted to introduce myself because I really respect you. And I feel like if I didn't do this right now, I'd regret it. So hopefully you can understand, but we'll talk later. You know what I mean? I'd probably just do it that way, really self-deferentially. And then, maybe at that point he's like, hey, it's okay. Like, let's talk. And then you guys talk next to each other at the urinal and play swords or whatever. And it kind of goes from there. I think that would be cool. Susan said, when I talk about imposter syndrome, I think she might have gone off. So I'm going to skip hers because I'm seeing people are on. I'm seeing a lot of the chat from when Sweet Ian was crying. Guys, I know there's more questions I'm able to get to on this. We're probably have to do a part 2. Marvin has an interesting question. Have you ever dealt with problems with ego when you're having lots of success? Don't know if you answered this already or you joined late. Yeah, that's cool. I love that. It's the flip side of the coin. I haven't personally, because I think when people have like huge ego issues, it's still because they have imposter syndrome on some level. And I think they still have self-worth issues. And they're sort of like, putting this ego out as a defense mechanism to try to like, project this kind of success with folks because they're afraid of like being found out to be like for who they truly are, which is a fraud. So I think if you can get really right with yourself, then you generally aren't going to have like a crazy ego, even if you're really successful. And I think there's a big difference between an ego and confidence, right? I'm like extremely confident in the projects I undertake and the things I do. And I believe they're going to be successful. And I believe everything I do is going to be successful wholeheartedly without a doubt. I don't think that's ego though. I think that's just like confidence and belief. And I think that's they're valuable tools that get me these crazy outcomes in my life that most people in the world never get to experience or achieve. I get to because of it. So those are the two ways I kind of look at that. Lafayette Ben's comment about the noise is way worse for you than it is for us. That's good to know, my daughter. Miro said, you mentioned that you're the average of 5 people we're the closest to. Does that apply to people we learn from? Because I'm pretty much every day with you. Yeah, you are, Miro. So hopefully that's a good thing. David said, have you studied Dr. Bruce Lipton and why the programming we get between birth and 8 years determines who we are as adults? Unless you remove the programming, you won't change. I haven't, but I mean, it makes sense to an extent. It makes sense. And I could argue you could even go past 8, although I'm sure Dr. Lipton knows better than me. Totally get it. Gabrielle, yeah, I do need Gmail filters. John Wynn asked, how has being a dad changed your mindset? In a really awesome way, honestly. Being a dad has changed me because like I've gone from, it's just a lot easier. It's really easy to not be selfish anymore. Cause like now it's like, it doesn't really matter what I want. Right. It's like what I think in context of what's best for my family. And also just because of the amount of love that's inside of me for my daughter. I mean, a bunch of my focus goes towards that now. Like, it's like, I don't know, man. I think this has made my heart bigger in general. And so, but I think the biggest thing is that it's no longer about you. People say that, but it's just super true. Cause now, like if I die tomorrow, how do I make sure my daughter never wants for anything for the rest of her life? I mean, she should want, actually, I do want her to want, but not like, I don't want her to, be devastated. And how do I do that? Oh, do you ever feel guilty while working? If so, have you done to deal with it? John, the guilt of working, yeah, I think if you really manage your time, I mean, like, maybe I'll jump into a little bit of the time management stuff here, but I kind of already did. But again, the way I really look at it is like, I take everything I've got for the week and I sort of like prioritize it all. This is like I've stole a bunch of people's systems from this, right? But like, again, I think someone said like an Eisenhower box or something. There's some different things for this, but like, is it like, you kind of label, is it urgent and important? Is it urgent but not important? Is it important but not urgent? Is it not important and not urgent? So I kind of like take everything going on my mind, brain dump it, and like do all of that. So the things that are urgent and important are probably gonna be the biggest like needle movers, right? Like I guess important would be the biggest needle movers. So if it's urgent and important, that's how I can prioritize what my biggest needle movers are for the week. Based on that, I kind of accept, okay, like how many can I really do? Well, how many hours is it going to take me to do each of these urgent and important like things? Like, and it may be like a sales letter. Well, that's going to take me, I don't know, 20 hours to write because it's me. All right. And so fine. So what does that mean? Do I need to write the whole thing this week? I do. Okay. So that means I need 4 hours a day. Okay. But do I have that much time? And if I don't, then I need to realign. I might have to move some stuff that's already hard scheduled into my calendar. I may have to tell the client I'm going to need an extra couple of days. I may have to figure out right from then and there. Plus, if I have to do that and I don't have any more time, then all this other stuff that is urgent and important that I think I'm going to get to, I have to almost accept, unless it's absolutely life or death, to accept like, okay, I'm probably going to get that this week then. I really wanted to, but I'm probably not. Let's say you don't have a sales letter. I mean, most of these urgent and important tasks are really like 3 or 4 hours, maybe whatever it is. So again, maybe I can get 3 or 4 of them done. So I look at my calendar, where do I have like kind of things that are static, like reoccurring meetings or calls or whatever that can't be moved. I always keep chunks open in my calendar, especially for me in the mornings when I do my deep work. And I can sort of take the blocks of these urgent, important things and sort of plug them in throughout the day, right? And so then I can be like, all right, what time do I want to like end my days at? I'm going to end at 4. Okay, so based on that, I may have time from 3 to 4 to do some other stuff that's urgent but not important. well, let me kind of prioritize that. What are the things I want to get done? And if I get those things done, awesome. And if I don't get them done, no problem. I'm not going to guilt myself about it because it was purely optional. I was playing with house money. So like if I do it that way and I sort of know the times, and I put boundaries on it, right? I'm going to work from the morning until 4. I'm not going to work at night unless I want to. I'm not going to work on the weekends unless I want to. And I have realistic expectations of what I can actually get done. Then I don't really have guilt about not working. Right now, one of my biggest anxieties for me is not working, but it's like, because I'm so active and putting myself out there, and I've got the RMBC Facebook group, Justin and Stefan Talk Copy Facebook group, Copy Accelerator. I've got my email list. I will, go away from my computer for like 2 hours, and I come back and I have like 85 or 90 notifications. And so people have tagged me on Facebook. And so people have tagged me on stuff. People have commented. I've got like 5 messages. I've got all this stuff going on, and it's a newer phenomenon for me. But even there, I've had to just sort of be like, I want to answer as many people as I can. And if I have time, if I decide I want to spend some time on my computer at night, I'll do it. And if I can't, then they'll understand. And if they don't understand, then that's just their problem. But I can't I can't not have any downtime. Or also because if I get burned out, I do everyone a disservice, right? If I'm burned out, I'm not helpful to everybody or anybody. So that's a big part of it. And then by the way, with the time management too, the other thing is building teams and being able to delegate. Like I ruthlessly delegate. I've talked about this before, but it's true. Like people ask me for anything and I've got somebody on my team who does that. I just don't, it's crucial to me. Eric, I have a thing, and Eric Chan messaged me privately. I'm going to circle back on that one though. There's a question about how the difference between a unique mechanism and a USP. Eric, if you email me, I sent an email to my list about that a while ago, which you're on, but you may not have been when I sent the email. If you email me, I can forward it to you. Atomic Habits is good, Michael Roshan. I agree. Mark Didio said, I'm going to do like 5 more questions probably. How do you maintain high energy, especially if you've been working for hours already? And do you have any sleep hacks? I honestly, dude, I'm pretty blessed on sleep. I wear earplugs. Like that's about it. Energy wise, it helps having more limited hours. I think that's a big part of it. But there's sometimes I get kind of tired, but I'll try and take a break. I'll try to go do something like after this call. Like for example, I have a call with Michael Rochin, who's on this call right now with us. He's in Copy Accelerator at 1. I'm probably ask Michael my time. I'm gonna ask him if we can do like 1:20 or 1:30 instead. And then assuming Michael says yes, I'm gonna go put my daughter down for bed in about 10 minutes, hang out with her upstairs and play. I'll probably take a shower, kind of maybe have a snack, do some stuff. I'll just give myself that kind of time where I just sort of chill and let my mind reset, and then I'll come back and I should be a lot fresher. So taking little breaks and then not overworking. I think we get more burned out when we overwork, or if we don't delegate, if we can't build teams, if we can't build systems, if we're doing a bunch of shit we don't want to do. I get it. We all do stuff we don't want to do, but if that's what your days consist of, if consistently your day is doing things you don't want to do, then it's impossible to have a lot of energy for that all the time, right? If you're consistently doing things that you love to do, it's a lot easier to have energy. So how do you get from where you are doing things that you don't want to do to where you do? I mean, what do you have? You may have to change your life entirely, or maybe you just have to eliminate a few things or make shifts. But having a plan, a roadmap to get you from here to here is really vital. Like Joe Polish talks about half versus ELF, kind of projects and businesses. Half is hard, annoying, lame, frustrating, and ELF is easy, lucrative, fun. Right? So his whole criteria is he only does stuff that is like ELF, that's easy, lucrative, fun. And it's a cool criteria because you can look at stuff and be like, is this half? Right? What is a business or an opportunity or a venture, or is it an ELF? And how do I get to ELF? Cool. Helen, I'm glad that helped you to understand that the decision to get rid of toxic people was valuable. It was a really good decision. I'm really proud of you for doing that. Going back through here, Elizabeth said, I've realized some people will criticize your failures and you eventually realize they're in the minority and they're doing that because they're toxic, want to bring others down. Yep, 100%. Cool, so we're almost caught up here, which is amazing. All right, sweet, awesome, guys. So we'll wrap up here. I obviously recorded it. I'm gonna put this up on YouTube. Thank you guys for joining me. I know I talked a lot, but I really hope that this was I really hope this was helpful to everybody. And feel free to email me about stuff too. I can't promise that I'm gonna respond to everything. Alberto is probably Desktop Copy Coach by Clay Makepeace and Tony Flores, which actually is in the secret swipe file for RMBC. If you dig through it, you can find it. But yeah, you guys, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. And we'll definitely talk soon. So thank you guys.